Welcome back, folks. We have a great show in store for you today. We'll be joined by Gold Star spouse Sarah Allman. But first,
hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
hello, guys, and welcome back to the program. We have a very special guest joining us today on the show, and these are tough shows to get through, but they're real and they're raw, and they're things that we need to talk about, to discuss. And today's guest is Sarah Allman. Now, she became a Gold Star spouse when her husband, Captain Andrew Allman, passed away from an aggressive cancer he endured as a direct result of his exposure to burn pits during his deployment to Baghdad, Iraq. Now, she is the founder of Gold Star Legacy, a nonprofit that's committed to honoring the lives of our loved ones who have given their life for their country by creating a community of the Gold Star families that have been left behind. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Sarah Allman. How are you, ma'am?
Fine. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It's a little dark outside. It is rumbling. I think it's getting ready to open up here. Hopefully we can get this show done without any delay and without getting zapped out. First off, before we start this program, I want to offer my sincerest condolences to you and your family on the passing of your husband. This certainly is a tragedy, and it's something that people need to understand, the service and the sacrifice that our U.S. servicemen and women go through on a daily basis, not only abroad, but here at home as well. And, you know all too well what that experience is like, and not just you, but your three kiddos as well that have all experienced this and have walked this walk with you down this path of the unknown, if you will, during this new journey of yours. But first of all, I just want to thank you for joining us today, because I know it takes a great deal of courage to get out there and to talk about these difficult things in life. At times, but the good thing about it is I call this healing. Talking about it, getting the word out on what you're doing now. You're thriving, and you're doing everything that your husband would really want you to be doing, I believe, and so you're doing a very great job. So first, I just want to commend you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. So you're a Gold Star spouse, and you're the proud mother of three. Now, let's go back to when you first met Andrew. What was that all like, and how did you guys end up forming this family?
We met back in December of 2007. We actually had our first date on Pearl Harbor, anniversary of Pearl Harbor, but it was a whirlwind, truly. By the time we had that first date, 7 months later, we were engaged, and 9 months later, we were married. But he actually deployed a week after we got married. And we had made that decision after a lot of prayer that we would go ahead and choose to get married before his deployment. We figured if something happened to him while he was deployed, we would have rather have been married for a brief time than to never have been married at all. But when we met, I was actually finishing up. I had gone to a 5-year college program at Kansas State University, and I was finishing out my 5th year. And he was at his, he had just commissioned with the Army. And so he had just gotten out to Fort Riley, Kansas, which are adjoining towns. And we had met that way. So I met him right from the get-go when he was in the Army, and got to see him through his entire Army career, if you will.
Now, your husband, Andrew, served as I believe he was an infantry officer, correct?
Well, he was an armor officer.
Gotcha. Now, he was deployed to Baghdad in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And, of course, he led his troops out of Fort Riley with First ID in Kansas. Now, that deployment to Baghdad, Iraq, would end up changing the course of not only your life and your children's life, but, of course, his life as well, as it would end up being fatal from what he was exposed to over there in Baghdad. Was there ever any inkling or any information that he shared with you when he was overseas about the conditions that he was in?
He would mention the conditions, but we just did not think that it would have the outcome that it did. He had registered for the burn pit registry years back just to, have his name on it because he was by it, but we just did not foresee what would happen. And given what he was doing on that deployment, I was well prepared to have that phone call or that knock on the door. And it was such a blessing to have him home safely. He was a platoon leader. He brought all his troops home safely. And just, 11 years later, it was literally like a smack in the face, because within a matter of weeks, he went from being incredibly healthy, doing CrossFit workouts with me. I mean, he would go even more than I would. He would be there 5-6 days a week sometimes, super fit, very healthy. And then it just seemed very out of the blue that he was incredibly sick, incredibly fast, could not even walk from one room to the next without needing help. So it was so quick. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with this too, is just raise awareness that, as a veteran, people need to be aware of their symptoms and keep up with their checkups and things, because even with him doing that, like, it still was such a shock.
Yeah. From what I know of your husband, Andrew, I mean, he was quite the leader.
He was.
He led troops safely on over 300 plus foot patrols throughout the streets of Baghdad. And folks, that's almost one a day when he was over there. And he would ultimately end up earning the Bronze Star. Now, when he got out of the Army, he would essentially, get back and begin that transition after service, and he would become very quickly one of the top sales folks over at Lutron Electronics. And that's when you guys really started to settle down and raise your family. What was that experience like, of him going from the military to all of a sudden you're with the civilian and you guys are really starting your life? You could settle down and really begin to nurture that family and again, raising those young ones of yours.
It was quite the process. He actually tried to transition out of the Army twice. The first transition was a little bumpy, and the company that he was going to work with was a startup company that just, it didn't work out. And the company was not able to maintain their funding. And so therefore, they had to let him go, and he wound up being able to get an active reserve position. And at the time we were in Pennsylvania, so he did that for a few more years and then transitioned out a second time. And that's when he worked for Lutron. So it was quite the process, but there's a lot to it, as you know, just that transition between going from the military to the civilian workforce and all the nuances that come with it, to include new insurance and just it's a whole new lifestyle. It's a whole new culture for your family.
Now, have you always been a stay-at-home mom? Were you that piece when he was overseas, that you would be home, almost as a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker, take care of the kids, food, laundry, Uber service, whatever you want to call it? Were you always that type of wife and mother, or did you have a secondary job outside of the house?
No, I've predominantly been a stay-at-home mom. So when he deployed, like I said, we got married a week before he deployed. And in that time frame, we actually got pregnant with our first. So I didn't even know that we were expecting until he was overseas. So I had to anxiously wait for that phone call to be able to tell him that we were expecting. And she was born almost 2 months early. So I had her while he was gone. The NICU nurses actually had a little camera set up so that he could pipe in if he was able to and be able to look in on her in her little incubator. And then at that point, I had worked when he was first deployed and when I was first pregnant. And then I, at a point, decided to leave my job, knowing that I was about ready to give birth. And from there, I have stayed home with the kids. Our second boy was actually a welcome home baby. So we call them our deployment twins. They're only 13 and a half months apart.
There you have it right there. The oldest two are deployment twins, being only 13 and a half months apart.
Yes.
And now they're 13 and 14 years old.
Yes.
The youngest is 6. You got a beautiful family. I met them out at Honor Cafe at the Gold Star event last week, and you are extremely blessed. Great, well-behaved kids. So I'm sure you're very, very proud of them.
I am.
And their strength, as well, and their perseverance, and their resiliency.
Yes, absolutely. My daughter in particular, she, as a way to honor her father's service, has recently joined the Civil Air Patrol.
Oh, that's neat.
Yes.
Is that something that they provide at the school, or is this something that you need to do in addition?
We homeschool, but this is like an extracurricular, if you will.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm sure he's shining down and he's very proud.
Yes, I believe so.
Now, you had stated when we first started, you have a very active family, and you and your spouse, your family, you guys have enjoyed biking and kayaking, and you were very active in your CrossFit community. And it came as this sudden shock when your husband began to rapidly lose strength. And folks, this is all very new. I mean, he began to lose strength out of nowhere. And by Thanksgiving of 2021, and by December, weeks later, he had been diagnosed with stage 4 gastric, and I'm not sure,
adenocarcinoma.
Now, prior to Thanksgiving 2021, had there ever been any blood work? Like, how do you go from Thanksgiving 2021 and rapidly declining into December of 2021, and then all of a sudden be diagnosed with stage 4? This must have came on and then rapidly went. I'm talking in weeks here, a month.
Yes.
What was there ever any signs that your husband was sick?
Well, in September, he had yearly blood work done and everything came back great. Just for more perspective on how quickly this came up. But he had a cough. We had COVID over that summer in July, and he had a cough, and we assumed, and other doctors had kind of assumed, that this was all a lingering effect of having been sick. And in November, beginning in November, that cough was worsening to the point that he actually gave himself a hernia, that he coughed so hard. And it was at that point that we were starting to really question, like, this is beyond a lingering COVID cough, that there's something else going on. And we went to several different doctors, and, living where we do, we have yearly allergies. So a lot of the doctors were kind of chalking it up to, this is allergy related. We don't see any other symptoms that would be glaring. So we would try different cough medicines, allergy medicines, inhalers. Nothing was kicking it. I think I counted at one point he had tried 7 different types of medications from 3 different doctors, and nothing was stopping this cough. And one day he woke up, and on the left side of his neck, he had 2 lymph nodes that had swollen to the size of golf balls. They were just, it was overnight. These popped up and they were huge. And we went to a civilian ENT that we've seen for years and have a lot of trust in him. And he looked at Andrew and said, "You are a veteran. These are classic signs of lymphoma." And he had really recommended him to have those lymph nodes biopsied, but warned him, do not let anybody excise the lymph node. Don't let anybody take it completely out to test it. You need to have a needle biopsy done, because while this is appearing as a lymphoma, if this is a carcinoma and they excise it, it's going to spread like wildfire. He actually equated it to a dandelion seed, where if you blow on it and all the seeds spread out, that if you excise something that's a carcinoma, it kind of has that same effect on the body, and it just spreads very quickly. And he had gone to the VA to try to have them start this process, but the doctor there wanted to excise it, and Andrew would not let him do that because of the information we had already received from our civilian ENT. And so we wound up going through MD Anderson, who they were able to do a needle biopsy, and he spent a week inpatient, and they did a slew of different tests and things before we were able to locate that he had a primary tumor in his stomach, right at the base of his esophagus and the top of his stomach. And it was a rather small tumor, but apparently that was kind of where everything had stemmed from. And by that point, it had spread to his lungs, which is why he was coughing. It had spread to his lymph nodes. And obviously, he had the tumor in his stomach. And so that was where the stage 4 came from, was that it had spread so severely at that point. He also had nodes that were on his liver in different areas. So it spread very quickly.
Back in September, when you had that blood work done and he was given a clean bill of health, would that blood work have picked up this gastric adenocarcinoma?
I have had that question as well, and apparently it did not. And there were even times when he was going through his 7 months of treatment where they would even say, like, his blood work, you wouldn't know he has cancer. So there were times when the blood work definitely showed he had cancer, and then there were times when it did not.
Have you ever had any infectious disease doctors go back and say, like after the fact, and start looking at his medical records and his charts? Like, were there ever any chest x-rays done pre and post deployment to kind of take a look at where he was back when he deployed to where he was in 2021?
No, we actually have not had anybody do more of an overview analysis of his health like that. That would be something to look into, though.
Well, because this is something that's beginning to happen all over the country. And there's a lot of your husbands out there because of the burn pits and these sudden onsets of catastrophic illnesses that you don't have a lot of time left. Right. They literally knock on the door, you open it, and that's it. I mean, you go from being perfectly normal and having a clean bill of health to literally skipping the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then literally being in stage 4 in 2 weeks. And that to me can't explain it. I mean, stuff like that doesn't typically happen. You usually have some sort of warning or, some sort of, things that will say, okay, look, there's something not right. But, again, it was masked by an allergy or a cough or whatever because of the seasonal, dust and pollens and the molds, whatever we have here in Texas, that would typically cause a cough or whatever. That is absolutely horrifying. This really puts things into perspective very quickly, especially for a man that was able to deadlift using 400 pounds, right?
Yes.
And within just a couple of weeks, he couldn't even walk from room to room without being assisted. At this point, what was his deterioration? What did the deterioration look like?
That It's hard to pinpoint on his deterioration how much was the cancer and how much was the treatment, because he was, it was an aggressive cancer. And even at MD Anderson, I can't tell you within that week of inpatient how many times a doctor would walk in and just point blank say, "You're a veteran, aren't you?" He would say, "Yeah." "Why?" And they'd say, "This is like, we've seen these veteran cancers just be so quick like this." So it was really no surprise to them seeing him in the state that he was, but it was the exhaustion. It was at one point in time. And again, I can't say if this part was the cancer or the treatment, but he lost 60 pounds in 2 weeks. And it was every day I would look at him and he would be thinner. And in my head, it was just, where's the weight going? It was just falling off of him, literally. So yeah, 60 pounds in 2 weeks. And so from there, then now with this rapid weight loss on top of exhaustion and loss of strength, it just created this storm of, the wheelchair was a fixture in our house. He would basically go from our room to a chair out in the living room. I would assist him to the restroom, which was kind of in the middle of those two rooms. And he would kind of make that triangle throughout the day. I had to bring him all his food, all, anything that he needed to drink. And that was a struggle too, just almost keeping to a schedule of when he would trying to regain some level of weight for him, trying to help him gain weight back, just because having more weight on him would help him process the chemo better. It was a struggle. It was a big struggle. And it was a very cyclical thing that we were fighting. It was just a constant.
You're describing this and it's bringing back horrible memories of myself when I was severely sick. And again, I can only imagine the mental anguish and the pain and the hardship and everything that you had to encounter. Now, as the wife, as the mother, this happened all so fast. Did you even have time to think and process on what was going on, or did you just simply react?
I definitely think it was just react.
Mm-hmm.
Just, kind of put my head down and do. We had appointments so many times throughout the week, and he couldn't drive, so I was his primary caretaker. And, it's, after being married for 14 years and he's always been the one taking care of me, it's hard to have those roles switched. And I was honored to take care of him, but it's hard to watch your loved one be in that position and feel so helpless about it. Absolutely.
The hopelessness and the helplessness, and you're just trying to do whatever you can to, to make it through the day and to ensure that his needs are being met, as well as, you've got 3 little ones too,
Yes.
That you got to make sure that their needs are being met. And a lot of the times it's it's the mother, it's the wife that ends up going neglected. Did you ever find at times of this struggle that you maybe perhaps stopped even taking care of yourself because you felt the need to take care of others?
I'm very much an acts of service person. So I do love taking care of other people, but thankfully, we had family that would come into town and they would be able to help with the kids, especially because treatment would take all day. So I would leave with Andrew in the morning and we wouldn't be back till the afternoon. So we did have some family that would be able to come in and help. Andrew's parents had come in for the first 6 weeks or so, and my mom was here for several months helping. So they would all kind of tag team and be behind the scenes with the kids, which was a tremendous help.
Oh man. Yeah, these are always tough ones, just because it just puts life into perspective, a good family, good salt of the earth, genuine and sincere family that's done everything right. It's done everything right and has lived an honorable life, and still these tragedies do happen, and they do occur. And really, at the end of the day, these types of illnesses and sicknesses, they do not discriminate. It can happen anytime, anywhere, to anybody. So folks, it's always good to just, get those regular checkups and always just kind of keep a close eye on what your health is going through. And if you start to feel some sort of issues or problems, it's always good to get it checked out. But in Andrew's case, he did just that. But this form of aggressive cancer literally happened overnight, and they didn't have any time to really go through those steps on the healing process and getting better, because he literally went from stage 1 to stage 4 overnight, and then he fought for 7 months, but would end up passing away on Father's Day of just last year, June 19th of 2022. Now, I mean, we're sitting here today, May 9th of 2023. I mean, we're not even a year yet. Have you had time to really even think and process on how your life has changed forever?
Still, it's a day by day, and I'm still working through that. Founding Gold Star Legacy has been critical to that, and just being able to process. It's been difficult. I have 3 kids that are each walking through this incredibly different. They're all incredibly different personalities, and I see it in even how they're grieving and how they're responding. And then my own is obviously different than theirs. So, it's not just my own grief. I'm walking 4 people through their grief. And, something I wanted to add to with the medical side of it is for veterans that have been by the burn pits, I really recommend, obviously keep up on your yearly checkups, but go get a CT scan. Tell your doctor that you want to have a scan, because I think that is going to say a little bit more than the blood work, just based on our experience. We've had several of our friends that have said they've gone and had full testing done, blood work, scans, and the works, just because watching what Andrew went through really opened their eyes. And sometimes the blood work's just not enough. And I don't know if in September that would have been any indicator or not. It may have really just been that fast that November hit, and that was that. But I do think those scans are helpful to have. And even if it's just a baseline that you can go back later and say, this is what it was at this point, and this is what it is now, and to be able to compare those.
Absolutely. I feel that if anybody served overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan and was exposed anywhere near a burn pit, that before they get out of the military, they need to have a CT scan and a full blood workup done, so you have something to always go back to years down the road, or whatever it may be. So you have something to look at. You have, the beginning here. But at the end of the day, I know people right now that are trying to push legislation to get just that done, blood work and diagnostics. And it's, the government comes back and say, well, it's too much money.
It's a lot less expensive to do those tests than to have the treatment, because I was astounded at the cost of the treatments.
Yeah, and there should never be a cost when it comes to protecting our country.
Right.
And for the U.S. men and women who serve, should never, ever have a price tag on what a CT scan is going to cost. With all the money that we send everywhere else, we've got to take care of our own. And really, it begins with us. It begins with the voice. It begins with a conversation. Now, you have turned your pain into a newfound purpose that I believe is helping you grieve through this walk that you are taking. And it's not an easy walk, with your 3 children. And you have founded Gold Star Legacy. And I'm talking quickly here. You're like, okay, this is what I need. I can easily go and become depressed and anxiety riddled. And I know you probably have those days. We all do. But to get up and to stand up and look adversity directly in the face and say, I'm going to honor my husband and those other people who have gone through similar type situations, and really connect with them in ways that will help heal everybody involved, to include Gold Star kids, because losing a parent is extremely difficult. I can only imagine the pain and the mental anguish and the despair and the, and the days and nights of just, crying yourself to sleep, if you will, because of how life has changed and how dramatic things have gone from being perfect to kayaking, to going on those bicycle rides, to playing on dad's back, to now attending a Gold Star event, and hanging out with other like-minded folks who have lost that parent. What has been your inspiration and your drive behind this? And how did this come to be? Was this something that you were perhaps driving down the road one day and said, I need to do something, and this is what I'm going to do?
Well, my oldest, who will actually be 14 tomorrow, she would lament to me quite frequently about wishing she knew somebody similar to her age that had been through something similar, that they could commiserate together. And that conversation came up more than a few times. And, I'm very open and honest with my kids. And we had sat down one night and we were just talking about, how could we honor your dad? What are things, how does that look like? What could we do? And it really just started as kind of this thread of, let's just talk through this. And we were kind of throwing things out there. And I had been praying for months that the Lord would just put feet to my grief. That was kind of how I was terming it, put feet to my grief so that I can process this. And it was as quick and simple as that, quite frankly, that one day I woke up and I'm like, this is it. This is what we're doing. And, continuing to pray that, is this really what you want me to do? Is this really where you would have me? And the Lord kept opening up door after door for all of it to fall into place. I mean, even the fact that I was able to get it set up as quick as I was, it just shows me this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And trust me, I'd much rather have my husband here, but God has made it very clear that this is now my path. And I have a lot of peace about that. And it has been very healing. And there's been a lot of time that has gone into it, a lot of late evenings, just up doing some of the administrative side of things that comes with a nonprofit and forming that. But it has been really healing. And the kids, for them too, we've got a couple events coming up. We have one at the end of May, and then we have the big one in June. And my middle boy designed the banner that's going to go on the back of our tent. And my daughter is going to design the sign that will have Andrew's information on it. And those sorts of things, them having the ability to be involved like that. They consider themselves junior board members, which I love, but they are really digging into it with me as well. And it's been good for them too.
That's just pulling at my heartstrings right now. That's just amazing how they can all, be a part of this and, kind of offer, their own creativity and their artistic look, and be proud to be a junior member on a board, to honor, the life and the legacy of their hero and of their father. And I've got to say, you have got to be one of the strongest women I know. Because to be a year into this, not even a year into this, and you're looking great. And like I said, your kids were so well mannered and very well dressed. And I mean, you are carrying yourself and your family name very extremely honorably in ways that I have never really seen other folks do. And I think that's just I think that's your faith. I think that's God. I think that's who you are as a person. And I think that's who you are as to lead by example, to show your kids like if mom goes in that room and she begins to be sad all the time and she, begins to, again, I was talking about the, the depression and the anxiety of all these life changes and the hardship and everything that comes along with self-isolation, that you're just going to teach your kids how to do that. But you have not. You have gone through these horrifying, muddy waters, and you're coming out, changing lives. I mean, it's not easy. Yeah, but you're doing it very well, and I think again, this is a credit to your character and to who you are as a person, and I think it all begins with faith.
That's so
And
good.
I want to take a quick break here. I'd like to mention my show sponsor, if you would. Now, today's show sponsors are great friends out of Canyon City, Colorado. Mr. Dan Francis, he is with the Mountain Man brand. Get your Mountain Man gear today, hats, shirts, and much more. Go check them out online, mtnmn.com. That's mtnmn.com. They have so many things to choose from to keep that Western heritage and that Western way of life alive. He is also a big part of the Military Rodeo Cowboy Association, and this is rodeo season. Go ahead and get your complete rodeo guide and schedule and help this great cause today by going to mrcarodeo.org. That is mrcarodeo.org. Folks, we are back with Sarah Allman. Now, she is a Gold Star spouse. Her husband, Captain Andrew Allman, suddenly passed away from an aggressive cancer that he endured as a direct result of his exposure to burn pits during his combat deployments to Iraq, that has left Sarah and her 3 beautiful children picking up the pieces. However, what has Sarah done? Well, she's now the founder of Gold Star Legacy, a nonprofit that is committed to honoring the lives of our loved ones who have given their life to their country by creating a community of Gold Star families. Now, this nonprofit is very new. You've just kicked this off, and you are having your first event. Could you explain what your first event will entail and how people can get involved?
Well, we're doing a 5K in June 24th at B52 Brewing, and it's called the First Annual Miles of Memories. And the 5K was very intentional. Andrew was bedridden at the beginning of his diagnosis, and throughout the course of his 7 months of treatment, he was just so determined that he was going to fight with everything he had. And he was able to build up enough strength at one point that we were going on walks. And it started that we would go from the garage to the mailbox, and then he'd go a little further. And he actually built himself up that at one point in time, we were able to walk the 3-mile loop on our street here. And so a 5K being 3.1, I thought it was very poignant to honor that determination that he had by having a 5K. And it's not a timed race. It's a walk or run. It's really just meant to get out, honor not just his determination and sacrifice, but everybody in our military, because the gumption that it takes for people to decide that they're going to serve their country, it needs to be honored. It needs to be valued. And that's really what we're seeking to do with this. So that'll take place again at B52 Brewing on June 24th. It starts at 9 a.m. Event information is on the website under the events tab. There's a link to register through Run Sign Up on there as well. And it's $35 for adults. And then there's kid pricing. And if you register before June 11th, we have really awesome t-shirts that we're going to be giving out to all the runners. And then we do have another smaller event coming up in May that will just be outside of an Ace Hardware on 1488 here locally, that we're collecting donations that will be donated to American Legion in honor of National Poppy Day.
Very good. Very good. Folks, Sarah, like she had mentioned, is having her first event. It is the first annual Miles of Memories, and that touches me because that country song, Miles of Memories. You can kind of get lost in that. It's a 5K, and it's going to take place at the new. Isn't B52 Brewing? Is that a new place that just opened up?
I think it's been there for a little bit, but I couldn't say for certain how long it's been there.
I must be thinking of something else. But anyways, it's at the B52. It's going to take place in Conroe, Texas on June 24th of this year. It's coming up, man. It's quickly approaching there. Next month. Now, how can you support Sarah's mission? You can go to goldstarlegacy.org today. Check out her website. You can register for this event. You can donate. There's so much that you can do. Now, when you put this nonprofit together with your children alike and having all this input, what's your vision for the future on what Gold Star Legacy will become?
I'm leaving that to God, quite frankly. I don't want to put myself into a pigeonhole with it because I think God's going to really use this to reach a lot of people. And the first thing is going to be creating our community of Gold Star families, being able to connect with other spouses and kids, being able to put them in contact with each other. And, if that's from abroad, then, we can have Zoom meetings and we can create pen pals for the kids. And if it's local, being able to get together and being able to sit face to face and talk through this grief process and walk through it together, I think is incredibly vital. But to be able to support one another, if there's a need that maybe Gold Star Legacy's funds can support them through that, whatever, if it's something with their house or some medical condition or something along that lines. And I'd love to even see us be able to offer counseling services at some point, that if they need to connect with somebody and be able to talk through it with a licensed counselor, that we would be able to help them through that as well. So there's a wide range of things I could see coming out of this, but first and foremost, let's get these Gold Star families together and let's connect and let's see what the needs are and be able to go from there.
I love the idea of having the children connect with other children from other states.
Yes.
You may not find exactly, what they went through here locally, but perhaps somebody in California or somebody in New York or somebody in, Colorado, they can connect with on a level that mirrored yours. And by having walked through that same experience and lived through that same experience is definitely something that will help the healing process and the grieving process as well for your young ones that they'll never forget. I mean, to have dad, be dad one day and then all of a sudden living through the experience of losing their father so fast, it's such a rapid clip. I'm talking 7 months here. There was never even really time to even think on what was happening. And I can only imagine again what, the children were going through as they were experiencing some of the toughest and roughest days of their life, and will probably always be the roughest and toughest days of their life as children. And to go through it as children, I mean, that's very hard to do, but it's definitely setting them up to be very strong people, and that will contribute in an honorable way. As they begin to grow into and mature into young adults, they will have that. You were talking about maybe even offering counseling services. They're going to become their own counselors through having, sharing in their own experiences with others. And as those other people may be having bad days, your kids are going to counsel, right? Give that wise, godly counsel. And I'm sure they will receive it as well on the other end. And that's having those like-minded people coming together, to share in that common, bond there, that is sure to probably stand the test of time once these new relationships are forged through the tragedies and the hardships that you guys have had to endure. Now, you plan on having several events throughout the year. What type of other events are you are you thinking about having besides perhaps a 5K?
We've definitely been brainstorming. My husband loved old British classic cars, so I think it would be really fitting to have a car show at some point in time. Maybe even a barbecue cook-off. He was quite the barbecue connoisseur, if you will. So just things like that relate. They're very purposeful in why we would be having them, because it's something that he enjoyed and loved. And so that's how we would be honoring him through it, but using these events as ways to connect with others and just get the military community together, because it's all about community.
Absolutely. It's all about community efforts. It's about getting off the sideline. It's about putting yourself into the game, being involved, being an active member of your community. And again, making that contribution. And folks, you can do the same today by making a contribution to Sarah in her mission by going to goldstarlegacy.org. That is goldstarlegacy.org. And if you're in Texas, if you are in the Houston metro area, if you're near Conroe, come on out, take place, register today. The first annual Miles of Memories 5K will be taking place next month at the B52 Brewing Company in Conroe, Texas. It'll be on June 24th of 2023, which is, again, it's very quickly approaching. And you will be donating to a beautiful cause, and you will be helping so many people, as a lot of these proceeds are going to be going to other Gold Star families, as well as Gold Star kids, to help bring these folks together that have endured some of the toughest times of their life. Sarah, I cannot thank you enough for coming on with me today to share your testimony, to talk about your husband who has sacrificed everything for this country. And, we owe you and your family a very large debt here. I sincerely believe that this Gold Star legacy that you have founded is going to morph into something that you could have never, ever seen coming or ever imagined, because of who you are as a person and the strength that you carry, and the character that you have and embodied, and what you show, and how you lead every single day, not only in the community, but as a mother to your family and to your 3 beautiful children as well.
Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate you having me on the show, and I appreciate your support and encouragement for what we're trying to do with this.
Of course. And I'm going to do my best to be out there. I know we do some traveling during the summer. My son plays highly competitive baseball. So that usually always keeps us running. But I've definitely got that day marked on my calendar. And if it doesn't change, I will be there and proudly be supporting you and your mission and your children and other Gold Star spouses and family members, moms, dads, aunts, uncles. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that Gold Star family is, a very special. It holds a very special place in my heart, because, again, guys, it's all about the sacrifice. It's all about writing that blank check payable to the United States of America, for a debt up to and including your life. And that is exactly what this military officer, what this father, husband, Andrew Allman, has done. And we will continue. His legacy will live on forever, and we will never forget. Folks, you got to understand, war, the deaths aren't always overseas, folks. And that's what people don't understand is, like, you fight a war, you come home, the war comes back home with you, and that's something that is horrifying if you think about it. And we've got to do better. We've got to really be aggressive in how we treat our service members and the way we can diagnose and prevent a lot of these diseases that are coming home with them, that are rapidly taking their lives far, far too early. And again, we have got to do better as a country. And I think we will. and I think we will, because we're moving very fastly and rapidly in Congress with these burn pit registrations. And, and I just hope that, there will be accountability one day, and that there will be some sort of justice and, other programs out there that can help these folks that have fallen victim to this horrifying disease due to burning trash and burning medical supplies and equipment, biohazardous materials out there that have caused so many servicemen and women to come home with horrifying illnesses that have taken their lives again far too soon. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done and continue to do in the military, in the veteran community, as well as in Texas, in your own community in Conroe. Your service, your sacrifice, and your dedication, as well as your husband's dedication, service, and sacrifice to our great nation is truly admirable.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the Allman family.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Folks, don't forget to subscribe to the program. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Facebook, and Twitter. Folks, always remember, life is hard. It is so difficult, but we have got to stay inspired. Take note from Sarah here. We've got to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night.